Comrade DSG, and the DSG forgot to tell you that tomorrow is not a tie session, black tie or anything of that sort. It's ANC regalia, and it's not a 3-meal course. We are not selling tables. We are launching the manifesto. And the president will be the main person tomorrow. So you must be there on time. Otherwise, you'll find us to have started tomorrow night. That is the beginning. There are many important events that took place this weekend. This week. It is the budget. We'll reflect on that. It is the cadre policy matters that we have been dealing with, and the announcement of the date of the election, which we welcome as the African National Congress, that we all know now as South Africans that on the 29th of May this year, on a Wednesday, we have an appointment for the elections of South Africa as declared by the president. On the deployment policy and the gaslighting of cadre policy, which we believe is a gaslighting of cadre policy, a smokescreen. The DA's real plan is to declare the transformation unlawful and unconstitutional. The ANC prides itself as an organization that discusses all its policies openly and embarks on robust public engagements before it adopts any policy. This tradition was developed and perfected over almost a century, from its first constitution adopted in 1919 to the Bill of Rights in 1923, the African Claims in 1943, the Freedom Charter in 1955, the Strategy and Tactics Documents 1969 to date, the Harare Declaration in 1989, Constitutional Guidelines for a Democratic South Africa, 1991, Ready to Govern, 1992, and to the Reconstruction and Development Program, 1994. The adoption of ANC cadre policy and deployment strategy in 1998 followed a similar process, and it was based on the resolutions of 1985 Kabwe Consultative Conference and the 1997 National Conference of the African National Congress. The key elements of the ANC cadre policy and deployment strategy are summarized in the 1997 policy document as follows, and you can Google it. Recruitment, which emphasis placed on recruiting from the motive forces who stand to gain from change and will therefore be keen to advance transformation policies. Steps must be taken to ensure they understand and internalize ANC policies. Education and training, political education, academic training, and specialized skills constitute a defining feature of a cadre. Other attributes include patriotism, revolutionary morality, humility, hard work, discipline, loyal and selfless service, dedication and keen interest in learning and self-improvement. Deployment and redeployment. Deployment must be according to speciality, aptitude, qualification, experience, and capability. Cadres should be correctly placed and promoted at the right time so that they may fully apply their talents and creativity. Cadres must also be redeployed to new areas of work so that they develop all-round skills to lead the process of national democratic transformation, promotion and accountability. The political performance of cadres through the knowledge of everyone's work, ability and personal life should guide placement and promotions, guard against favoritism, opportunism, regionalism, ethnical, tribal or gender discrimination. Preservation of cadres. Preservation should include consideration around working conditions, preservation of skills, health and security. These key elements of our cadre policy and deployment have guided the implementation of our National Democratic Transformation Agenda, also referred to as the National Democratic Revolution. The total transformation of our country into a non-racial, non-sexist, united, democratic and prosperous society. The ANC has not made it secret that its primary mission is to eradicate all forms of colonialism, patriarchy and apartheid, and empower those who were excluded and exploited. The transformative constitution of our country makes it mandatory, I quote, heal the divisions of the past and establish a society based on democratic values, social justice and fundamental human rights, close quote. Transformation is therefore a constitutional imperative. The DA-led right-wing forces opposed to transformation have launched ideological offensive that has deliberately and systematically sought to fundamentally distort and crudely caricature ANC cadre policy and deployment strategy. For quite some time, a false narrative has been pushed vigorously in the media about the exact nature, purpose, and actual practices pertaining to the deployment of cadres. There has also been a concerted effort by the anti-transformation forces to use the courts in their fight to slow down, stop or reverse the transformation agenda by trying to impose a conservative interpretation of the Constitution and law of the Republic. We'd like to deal with 5 core elements of the right-wing ideological offensive, gaslighting, and narrative warfare against cadre policy and deployment strategy. The primary objective of this narrative is to discredit and defeat the National Democratic Revolution and the National Democratic Transformation Agenda, led by the ANC Alliance, constituted together with the SACP, COSATU and SANCO, as well as the entire progressive forces spectrum in our country. Firstly, the Democratic Alliance spin doctors and ideologues have invested heavily in churning out the false narrative that the policy and practice of cadre policy and deployment is an aberration in a democracy and is therefore unlawful and unconstitutional. Nothing could be further from the truth. In many democracies, it is common practice that a party that has won elections seeks to ensure that the people who are appointed to senior positions in the administration understand and support the policy agenda of the democratically elected governing party. So long as such people are appointed in accordance with the legal procedures and they meet the competency requirements for such positions. After all, parties are elected to lead government on the basis of their policies and performance. And deployed cadres in this regard become the stewards to steer the policy paradigm as entailed in the elections manifesto of the party that won the elections. We are not implementing the manifesto of the DA. the manifesto of any other opposition party. We are implementing the manifesto of the African National Congress that the people in 2019, on the 5th of May, voted the ANC overwhelmingly into power. 5th of May and before that. And that is what we've been doing. You judge us on the basis of that manifesto and what we have committed ourselves and promised we will do for the people of South Africa. A study of several countries carried out by the OECD in 2007 found that political involvement in public administration is essential for the proper functioning of democracy. The study argued without it, an incoming political administration will find itself unable to change policy direction, as long as there are safeguards to protect the public service from being misused for partisan purposes instead of national interest. Importantly, the study found that more political influence in staff matters may work well if there are checks and balances. Essentially, political parties ensure that for their policy agenda to be carried out systematically, they must develop their own members so that they have shared vision and values and encourage them to acquire the requisite skills. In many democracies, party schools or training institutes are even funded through the public purse. Some parties rely heavily on recruiting people who share their vision and values. Recruiting from universities and think tanks. This practice is very prevalent in the United States of America, where every incumbent that wins election replaces the entire top echelons of the administration. Of course, there are other democracies where the practice is different. The DA is profoundly dishonest and misleading the public in presenting itself as a party that does not deploy its members into the public service to pursue its policy agenda. In this regard, the DA pretends that all its deployees are merely recruited by the chance of merit and not a deliberate effort to advance the DA's agenda. There is evidence in the city of Tshwane and the Western Cape that the DA itself has been practicing its own version of deployment of its leaders and members into positions of administration where the party governs. This includes a parallel process of the DA federal executive candidates for employment in DA-led municipalities, as described by Alan Winde in a submission to the public protector in 2021, in which he correctly argued that such internal rules and policies are widespread, quote unquote, widespread and common. The narrative that the deployment of cadres is unconstitutional and unlawful has no basis in law. Hence, the High Court correctly found out that the DA failed to point out to any text, neither in the Constitution nor any statutes that supports their claims. It is an ideological and philosophical preoccupation of liberal extremists and neo-conservatives who want to declare as unlawful and unconstitutional any policy that seeks to dismantle and transform the apartheid, colonial and patriarchal social and economic realities. Their case was a failed anti-transformation intervention through the courts. The courts have been some of the terrains which some of these political battles are fought as substitutes for electoral victory, and the idea being to plant negative narratives about the legitimacy of the ANC National Transformation Agenda. In many cases, the courts have given a transformative interpretation of our law as mandated by the Constitution. We do not believe that the right wing will succeed in trying to use the courts to subvert transformation. There are many judgments that have upheld the transformative impulses and imperatives of our country's constitution. We are a democratic constitutional state, and the starting point, win the elections. Recently, the DA approached the courts to declare cadre policy unconstitutional and unlawful, and they could not convince the Gauteng High Court on their ideological and philosophical spin. The High Court verdict was straightforward, I quote, "There is nothing unconstitutional about a political party influencing the policy direction of government, including the appointment of senior personnel to public service, so long as the public service is protected against being misused for partisan purposes." Close quote. There is indeed no law preventing a private body, such as a political party, from discussing potential candidates for any position. What is wrong is where the prescribed legal processes are not followed in the appointment of individuals, whether it be to the public service, the judiciary, or state-owned enterprises. If the due legal process is flouted, then those doing the flouting should be held to account. Many nominations to positions in public entities are made by Parliament or through specialized bodies like the Judicial Service Commission. Political parties actively participate in the parliamentary processes that select and make final recommendations or decisions on suitable candidates. In this regard, we draw your attention to the distortion of the letter of Jesse Duarte to Lamola, which the DA have perpetuated helplessly and falsely and misinterpreted it to the latter as meaning something else, that the ANC interferes in this particular regard. This is done precisely because Parliament must likewise satisfy itself that those being appointed into this crucial arm of the state are fit for purpose, same as the executive does within its purview of administrative governance. It should be expected that parties will have internal discussions about which candidates to support for these positions in public entities, and they even vote for such candidates. In other instances, members of Parliament also decide on whether to remove people from specific public entities in line with the Constitution. It is no accident that votes for candidates to such positions are almost always along party lines. Indeed, political parties should be encouraged to have such discussions because that is likely to produce a more considered outcome than simply relying on the whims of individual MPs. This is a political involvement, and consequently, it results in deployment of specific candidates. To argue that such any criticism of any candidate undermines the independence of the judiciary or any other public institution like the SABC or JSE or PSC is breathtakingly dishonest for a party that has often criticized individual candidates, often black, in parliament interviews. So the question whether any party in its own internal processes discussed the names of particular candidates is not material if the final decision is in accordance with what the constitutional or legislative prescripts demands. This is what the court has actually said yesterday. So the DA has no case on this matter, as the court has ruled. Secondly, another ideological and philosophical incomprehensions being churned out by the DA propaganda machine is that the ANC cadre policy and deployment strategy is responsible for state capture and corruption. There is no truth to this false narrative. Those of us who live in South Africa know fully well how state capture was carefully orchestrated and executed by the Gupta brothers and their network of enablers in government and big corporates. There is ample evidence from the Zondo Commission and several court cases. In its lapse of logic, informed by the attempt to hoodwink voters, the DA has suddenly and opportunistically forgotten that state capture and corruption is not a party political agenda, but a result of calculated actions by networks of individuals who seek to weaken and destroy the capacity of state institutions so that they can loot large sums of public funds for their own selfish benefit. The DA wants to excuse the thieves and give them political cover that they were stealing for an ANC instead of ensuring that those responsible for state capture and corruption in our land must face the consequence of their selfish and greedy deeds. The ANC has tightened its internal processes to hold all its members involved in wrongdoing accountable and has further taken steps to give more teeth to anti-corruption agencies of the state. No member of the ANC can say they were given a mandate by the ANC to loot the public purse. It is not plausible, and there should be no excuse. Thirdly, the DA's gaslighting flies in the face of the very essence of multi-party democracy. Cadre recruitment and deployment are amongst the key functions of political parties, and political parties are critical to multi-party democracy. Political parties are key to our multi-party democracy, which we fought for, and is guaranteed in the Constitution. The government is therefore the expression of the people's choice, expressed through elections. It has been argued, I quote, that political parties are the key mechanisms that make the democratic chain of political delegation and accountability work, close quote. The literature on political parties across the world therefore converges on the following key tasks that political parties perform in democratic societies: soliciting and articulating public policy priorities, socializing and educating voters, balancing opposing demands and converting them into general policies, activating and mobilizing citizens, channeling public opinion, and lastly, recruiting and training candidates for public office. Most political parties campaign on policy platform, Manifesto, which is what the ANC is going to do this weekend. And when they are elected to govern, seek to implement its political programs in government. This is an important part of legitimization of democracy and depends on, I quote, extent of which policies submitted for public approval before an election translate into material outcomes once a political party has won power. And that is why the DA is opposed to affirmative action, is calling for leaner public service. It's against our social security policies. They are against them. It's their policy. They are against affirmative action. What we have done in the past 30 years to affirm black people into critical position of state power and even to society in general, including women, blacks, and affirm them into positions. They are opposed to that. They say they will reverse that. They equate that to racism or whatever that they characterize to be. They believe that this society has normalized after 1994. We believe 1994 was a breakthrough that enabled us to accelerate transformation in our country. And that's what we stand for as the ANC. For any serious governing party to leave this program of policy to implementation to chance, as the DA well knows, is irresponsible. Fourthly, since the early days of our democracy, the DA has been pushing the narrative that cadre policy and deployment policy strategy is the cause of government failure, because this is ostensibly about destroying people who have no qualifications and competencies for the positions for which they are deployed. You can look at all the people who have deployed, who have given you what we have given to the DA. Go and check their qualifications. As cadres of the movement, check them. I challenge you. And come back to me and say, this one did not qualify, did not go to school. DA deploys standard 3s where they govern. They deploy bodybuilders where they govern. That is the strategy of Brother Bond. We are not Brother Bond. We are not Brother Bond. They call us Brother Bond. We are the party of transformation. That's what we are. We don't deploy bodybuilders. And that is why even in our municipalities, where there's been ineptitude in terms of the deployment of people, as the ANC, we have called a stop to that. We have called a stop to that. And then we have also looked at misdeployment, where you were supposed to have a doctor deployed to deploy a teacher. In the 30 years, we have changed that. But look at our deployment and our decisions and look at the minutes of that deployment. You will see that the people we deployed are qualified as the ANC. I won't mention them by names, even some of their people, because it has been redacted in terms of what we have given to them, because I don't want to be subjected to Popia tomorrow. And then people say that Mbalula broke the rule, and then that is it. I won't do that. Even those that you know, I won't mention them. In the key elements of cadre policy outlined earlier, there is clearly stated emphasis about the importance of skills, qualifications, and competence. And I've made a point out about that. There are also citizens who are not members of the ANC, who have been deployed by our movement to specific positions on account of their expertise and patriotic loyalty to our country, its constitution, and its transformation agenda. These include members and leaders of opposition parties. We have deployed, including people as consulate and everything, who are not members and who don't carry membership of the ANC, because it's a call of patriotism. And some of the loud mouths of the DA today were deployed and to senior positions out of the country by this government. In our government, despite our majority, we have even brought people in because we believe in this vision of a united South Africa. Unity of our people is sacrosanct. Unity in diversity is what we embrace. We are not a black African party, as much as that is defined in the content of our revolution, but we are a non-racial organization, and we have expressed that in terms of what we stand for. At the Zondo Commission, our President, Comrade Cyril Ramaphosa, made the point clear that there is nothing wrong with the policy itself, but there are known weaknesses in its application in instances where merit is not observed. I quote, "It is the ANC's view that the practice of cadre deployment should not be inconsistent with the principles of fairness, transparency, and merit in the appointment of individuals in public entities. Cadre deployment cannot be faulted in principle. It is a common feature of democratic practice around the country. But we will concede that there are weaknesses in its practical implementation that make the case for greater clarity both within political parties and the state." Close quote. The 54th National Conference of the ANC has called on the organization to ensure that no unsuitable individuals, I repeat, no unsuitable individuals are deployed in the name of cadre policy, and that more investment should be made in the development and encouragement of ANC members to undergo rigorous ideological, academic, technical, and ethical training as part of the renewal project. This will enable the ANC members to play a central role in improving service delivery and transforming our country to heal the divisions and injustices of our past and create a society based on democratic values, social justice, and fundamental human rights as mandated by the Constitution of our Republic. The ANC has also tightened its processes of selecting candidates for national and provincial legislatures in order to ensure that we attract individuals and identify people with the necessary expertise, skills, experience, including young people who are talented and committed to social justice and fundamental change. It is our firm view as the ANC that a proper and full implementation of cadre policy as defined in our documents will help speed up transformation and service delivery. Fourthly and lastly, the DA then concludes by putting forward the false narrative that all the social and economic problems of South Africa can be traced to ANC's cadre policy and deployment strategy. Deep structural inequalities, continuing racism, spatial and economic apartheid, and the fact that the face of unemployment, poverty, and inequality is black and female is apparently because of cadre policy, cadre deployment. This is not only ridiculous, but it is also incredible that the DA believes that South Africans are stupid or simply forgetful. An honest conversation among South Africans cannot be based on such a false starting and conclusion, described by the Gauteng High Court as quote-unquote speculation and conjecture. To tackle persistent disparities in our society, we need more fundamental transformation and genuine partnerships. To try and avoid an honest conversation by heaping all the blame on cadre policy is neither serious nor truthful nor helpful. The question arises is, why is the DA seizing on cadre policy and hoping that the courts and the electorate will buy into their plan to declare transformation unlawful, unconstitutional, and therefore illegitimate? Why does this party think that South Africans will not see through its profound, naked hypocrisy and its real intentions? Why does the right wing think that people will not see through their agenda of funding many small parties in order to fragment the forces that seek genuine transformation of our country through the unity of the motive forces for change that stands to benefit from such change? In delivering this year's January the 8th statement, the president of the ANC, Cyril Ramaphosa, made reference to the fact that the DA-led transformation forces are converging, hoping to stop, derail, and reverse the transformation agenda. And in pursuit of these objectives, they have accordingly adopted many strategies and tactics. And some of them is the proliferation of political parties. The ideological offensive on cadre policy and its caricature and the distortion is aimed at mobilizing South Africans, including many black and women professionals who have been the beneficiaries of the transformation policies against the ANC. What the DA and other parties that practice deployment have failed to tell the people of South Africa is that they too practice deployment. The difference is that they deploy mainly white males as their fight-back strategy against national transformation in order to preserve the legacy of colonialism and apartheid. Unlike the DA, the ANC is open and transparent. Everything we seek to achieve and in whose interest are we pursuing is in our public documents and in the public domain. The National Democratic Revolution and the transformation agenda we are pursuing are no secrets. We have nothing to hide. Can the DA share with South Africans its minutes and records of deployment, decisions, whatever they call it, and explain what policies underpin such deployment? In other words, in pursuit of what kind of society and on whose behalf is the DA governing in the Western Cape and several municipalities? The ANC awaits the release of the DA records of deployment with bated breath. The African National Congress is pleased to support the budget presented by Minister of Finance, Comrade Enoch Godongwana, as a significant step towards protecting the achievements of the 30 years of democracy in South Africa and working towards a better life for all citizens. This budget effectively addresses the pressing needs of the nation, as outlined in our January 8 statement. These needs include rebuilding the economy to create more jobs and stimulate growth, enhancing basic services and infrastructure, tackling gender-based violence and promoting family values, resolving the energy crisis and ending load shedding, and intensifying efforts against crime and corruption. We are confident that this budget not only sets the stage for achieving these goals, but also ensures the stability of the country's public finances in the face of global uncertainty. Thanks to this budget, the ANC-led government has successfully stabilized the GDP, gross domestic product, to debt ratio. We are especially pleased with the significant funding allocated to education, healthcare, social protection, infrastructure, and human capital development. In terms of rebuilding our economy to generate more jobs and foster growth, this budget shows a strong dedication, with 61.4 billion earmarked for employment programs over the medium term and 7.4 billion allocated to the presidential employment initiatives. It is clear that job creation is a top priority. Efforts to address the inefficiencies in the logistics system by improving efficiency, encouraging competition, and enhancing technological capabilities are commendable. The conditional allocation of 47 billion rand to Transnet will greatly contribute to these enhancements. Additionally, the budget takes a firm stance against crime, corruption, and gender-based violence. The allocation of 756 billion to the peace and security cluster underscores the government's commitment to combating these issues. We also welcome the announcement. Lizeka, I'm going to give Duma to deal with Itala. Here in KwaZulu-Natal, because the people of the country won't know Itala. And is also the MEC deployed by the ANC. So to what Sam Kele asked, Duma will deal with that point. Lizeka, the power of deployment in terms of JC and the emails and all of that. The members of the ANC and Integrity who have clarified that point. ANC members who did not appear in the Integrity Commission are before the Disciplinary Committee. So the DC, when it deals with the matter, it does it without the cameras. So we have reported on that. The matter is before the DC. All those members who did not appear before the Integrity Commission, their matter is before the Disciplinary Committee. A decision of the Integrity Commission, which was adopted by the National Executive Committee. The NEC have adopted that. So there is nothing that, like the ANC does nothing to integrity, including to its members who appeared before the Zondo Commission, and Zondo Commission took steps, suggested, make recommendation about those members. The ANC have taken steps in relation to its members. The state must act and do its job without fear or favor in relation to Zondo's recommendation to investigate individuals. What we don't subscribe to is kangaroo court, where in which we want to become the state, and within the state we want to become the courts and punish people without the due process. Where the state institutions undertake the course of prosecuting people, they are free to do that. It's not gonna be about whether you are ANC or not ANC. But in relation to ANC members and them appearing before the Zondo Commission and what the Zondo Commission said, 90 of them who did not appear before the Integrity Commission, their matters have been deferred to the Disciplinary Committee. And as the Secretary General, implementing the decisions of the NEC, that has been done. I'm clarifying this now for the, I don't know, the longest of time. I think what we are waiting now is the judgment of the DC on these members. So we don't have it. The DC is processing these individuals. 90 people is not a child's play. And some of them, their membership of the ANC could have lapsed. And they will not even probably appear before the DC or whatever that's the case, and so on. But that matter is being processed. What was the issue about the deployment power? No, it's not correct. The deployment committee task is very simple, is to deploy in relation to what is before it, and it processes those matters that require deployment. It doesn't hold anybody accountable. Accountability and accounting, it's a political matter that belongs to the ANC structures, including holding the president accountable. That task remains the task of the NWC, the officials of the ANC and the National Executive Committee, which they account to those structures as and when they are called by the office of the SG whenever it is required, and then to give reports and to appraise the ANC on various matters. And that includes the president, who as the president of the ANC, again, brief the ANC and take the ANC into confidence on various matters in his purview as the president of the African National Congress. So the deployment committee, in terms of its mandate, doesn't have a mandate to convene people on operational matters and micromanage the state. We don't do that. The deployment committee deals with deployment. And let me explain the issue of deployment. The deployment committee does not decide in terms of the state, in particular government, for instance, or parastatal, who to employ. It encourages its members to apply, and those who've got the requisite skills. And that is it. And those members compete with the rest of society. And then the state organs or whatever state institution or whatever will then make a determination on the basis of what is before them. Now, in terms of our records, you will realize that on each deployment, we recommend Mbalula. It might happen that in terms of the fielding and the interviews, Mbalula fails. And then that's it. So it's not a micromanagement. So the intricacies of how deployment happens, it's a policy implementation. And how it gets to be operationalized by the deployment committee is that the deployment committee then look at the state and influence the state in relation to mobilizing within its ranks the best of the best to apply for particular positions within the state and wherever deployment is actually required. Power of the deployment committee, does it, I mean, for instance, the question you're asking, do we employ? It doesn't. It cannot. It doesn't have such powers. If you are a member of the ANC and you are a deployed cadre, you function within the parameters, and then you do what is expected of you. And then in this particular instance, in those deployment, you implement what is required of you in terms of the party policy. For instance, when the ANC win the elections, when you are within the public service, you are a DG, you implement the policy of the ruling party. Even in government, we invite even the DA in the Western Cape, within cabinet and even Mahotlas, they understand that the policy that is being implemented is the policies of the ANC in terms of its manifesto. So you don't become creative and bring your own things that are not a mandate of what the people seek to see out of a government that they voted into power. So that's what basically happens. The deployment committee doesn't fire DGs and all of that and dismiss people and all of that. It doesn't. That will be rogueness. It will be what we characterize as encroachment, and at the same time micromanaging the state. It means we will now effectively be determining what must happen operationally within the state. We don't do that. You are deployed, you are expected to do what is right. That's it. So that's how we understand it, and that's how it has been happening. Cadre policy. The president of the ANC, let me quote again in Debo, says at the Zondo Commission, it is the ANC's view that the practice of cadre deployment should not be inconsistent with the principles of fairness, transparency, and merit in the appointment of individuals in public entities. Cadre deployment cannot be faulted in principle. It is a common feature of democratic practice around the world. But we would concede that there are weaknesses in its practical implementation that make the case for greater clarity both within political parties and the state. We have said that at Zondo Commission. We have admitted that. Inherent, you will find that there is abuse and all of that, doing things that are not consistent with what we want to achieve. We want people who are qualified for the job, well-trained, understand, conscious of what the ANC and the people of South Africa have mandated us to do through the manifesto. And therefore, this is what we expect from the cadre policy. And we have also admitted the weaknesses of the movement in relation to this particular matter. You will find that in Kisvatar and Moyani and all of that. I'm not sure whether Kisvatar and Moyani are deployed by the ANC. But for your case, as you have singled out as an example, I'm saying to you that the processes that lead to the appointment of those deployment committee is sensitive, not to be seen to be micromanaging and at the same time undermining those particular institutions. So where a person is deployed and is a disgrace, you can have a person who's a doctor, well qualified, when it comes to work, they are lazy. What do you do? It can happen in the ANC, it happens the world over. In terms of people who are deployed, they are expected to do the work, but they don't do it. And some of them get astray and do wrong things. That does happen. So it's a question of you deploy the best and you expect them to perform diligently and all of that. I can tell you the ANC deployment has produced some of the best director generals over the years. And we have never been found wanting and have produced the result. And to transform South Africa from an apartheid state to be where we are today, these are some of the best individuals whom who can give an account of the good work they've actually done. I've quoted for you all policies of the ANC up until 1994, RDP, preceded by Ready to Govern. And then in the implementation of those policies, these comrades and our cadres have been very diligent in terms of that work that they've done. DA Records, Ati, from Russia, with love. DA Records, I mean, they will deny that they have such. They will tell you that they don't deploy. Everything happens on merit and through superstition and all of that. By luck, we find somebody good. It's not true. They deploy their own. They took their MP from Parliament and deployed as the city manager of Cape Town because they believed he's the best. That's what you do. We never faulted them on that. We never said, no, this guy doesn't qualify for this and so on. They took him straight from Parliament to the city of Cape Town, made him a city manager. So the only problem with them is that they are hypocrites and that they are dishonest. And they play politics where they shouldn't play politics on matters of principle, like the question of deployment. It will be interesting if we ask them their records, whether they will be able to give us. We don't know whether they will, but we know that they do deploy. It could be as well that their deployment is decided by two people. It's done in secrecy. And we are open. Our biggest challenge here is that we are too open. Otherwise, if we were operating as a secret party, I'll be standing to you, I don't know. I've never seen. We're not saying that. I'm giving you history. And they've challenged deployment policy. It's not secret. And I've given you principles, historical background. It's not a secret movement. It's done. And we're defending the principle in the court in terms of the records. And then now, they are nitpicking out of the records. They distort this and that. And this is whom they deployed. This is what JC said and the letter and all of that. The ANC racketeering. The judiciary in this country, there is what is called Judicial Service Commission. I mean, Malema is a superstar there. In that Judicial Service Commission. He's a superstar. He holds judges accountable. Yeah, men are very, very trembling there. They are asked serious questions. It's on television. It's a movie. Wonderful movie. And nothing is done in secrecy. You come here now and say, no, ANC interferes. These people, men and women who are appointed, they are not known where they come from. But Justice Maya, you know, ANC people made a mistake and put Justice Maya on a poster. And then they said that this is what democracy has delivered. We have a first black woman. Oh, Mama Wabantu had to clarify herself. Hey, ANC, how can you do that? We had to apologize to her. And then here is the ANC claiming judges. We don't claim judges. We are just reflecting. That bench, that constitutional court is black. It's black. And go and look at all of them. Human rights, lawyers, their background. Chaskalson was the first. It's still mystery to me why Museneke was not made, but it doesn't matter. Anyway, that's my personal view. Before I'm attacked by Nomvula and called to order, let me keep to the script. So the point is that we have had the best of the best. Judges up to Mogoeng. And Mogoeng to be a judge, back and forth. He was interviewed. Everybody gave him names and all of that. But guys, as a judge, he was good. There are good judgments he has done. Politically, I don't agree with him. politically, as Mogoeng. His views are very extreme and so on some of the things. But as a judge, I hold him in high esteem. I'm not the lawyer, but some of the judgments I've read coming from him, without fear or favor, they've been good from the bench, and many other judges. Now, we have actually transformed the judiciary. It is very strange, Samkele, let me come to your questions. Regressing in parliament. You know, we are dealing with Hlophe. Some of the people who criticize Hlophe are saying he will never go home hungry today. You saw yesterday, Malema. He said Hlophe will not go home hungry. You are on Twitter, don't say you didn't see it. And then we were not there, me and Nomvula, we're not officials, when Hlophe was being challenged on his ethical conduct by political parties. Some of them today are hypocrites who are saying that the ANC is conniving with the DA. When a judge, very good judge, make misjudgments and does things that are not supposed to be done, and unfortunately it happened to be a black judge, and then you say the law must be blind because Hlophe is black, the rule of law must not be upheld. Where will this constitutional democracy go to in the next couple of months and years to come? It's going to die. Mbalula must not be charged because he's the SG of the ANC. If he does something wrong, Ramaphosa must not step down if he's found wrong in terms of the law. Jacob Zuma must not be held accountable. And the list goes on. It doesn't work like that. Rule of law, which is a cardinal pillar of the national democratic revolution. Once the rule of law collapses, society collapses. Now, they've gone through a rigorous process. They started challenging him and then raised the case. Some of them are vacillating. They've changed with the wind. You know, Mandela says, if you change policies on the basis of the constituency, you fail, not on principle. You are not a leader. When you meet people and you look at them, you think they want death penalty. You go out and then you come back with, since I forgive death penalty, Bagit. Those people will never vote for you because you are a liar and a populist. You are not consistent. Principle teaches us that you must stand for what it is right, even if the majority don't agree with you. That's it. It doesn't matter. We have agreed with the EFF and many other political parties in that parliament, and who have even extreme views that they want to erase the ANC surgically. Floyd says that. You know, surgical removal. We don't want to see the ANC. Even if it means we will work with the DA as long as it is not the ANC. He says that. But these hypocrites, they will change tomorrow and say, the ANC worked with the DA, and you believe them. They have worked with the DA when we lost power, when we were crumbling. When we brought ideology to them, they said, we don't eat ideology. Go away, Mbalula, and swim. I was there, talking to them. I've accepted that. These politics are the way they are. Today in South Africa, it's a multi-party democracy. And then you can work with everybody. But we as the ANC, we know the dangers of coalitions and all of that. And we don't want to find ourselves having to kneel to right-wing and conservatives. It's unfortunate that we could arrive at the decision of Hlophe, but that is what we voted for in 1994 through our constitution. Unfortunately, that's what we voted for. Now, if you read and you listen to people, Judge Hlophe, what they say about him, from that corner of the Eastern Cape, Transkei, University of Walter Sisulu today, which produced the best minds, legal minds, up to Ngugai Tobi, the best lawyer in the Republic today, the best judges you get in the Constitutional Court. They come from the hands of Hlophe, and some of them worked with him. They were colleagues when they talk to you about his understanding of the law, you reminisce. And the fact that we can come to this point, not on the basis of his ability to think and to understand the law, but behavior. You fall in life, not because you couldn't think, but you fall because of misjudgment. And that's why people apologize and step aside. Powerful people, because they made erroneous decisions. And it happens. And it happens with Klopp. And there's no way the ANC is going to flow with something that undermines the rule of law. And that is the point. So we stand where we stand. And we are not delighted. We don't celebrate it, but it's got to be done. Because something has been found there in terms of this individual. Judge Mutata, shame, he went in through a wall. You know, and a judge, sober. You know, this thing that judges, I'm sober as a judge. Mutata just changed it overnight, and it was a something. You know, judges here and then, but it is painful. Now, the deployment, how does it function? The deployment committee meets and look at different areas of deployment, strategic. We don't deploy street vendors, and we don't deploy kitchen, garden people and all of that. Strategic deployment, it means what is key. What is key to drive the economy, the civil service, the country in a particular direction. You think before you deploy, does this person qualify for this? And that's what is important. Now, we don't deploy supply chain managers. We don't deploy chief directors. We don't deploy, what is this? Everything below that. No, we deploy strategic deployment. That's why DGs are not permanent. Their term is 5 years. And if in that 5 years they happen to commit things, they will be held accountable. They are not there permanently. Meaning the next administration can still have its own DG if we are out of power and all of that. But the fact of the matter is that it is strategic deployment for a reason. We deploy DA people. We don't look at people as DA. We look at their qualities. But we come to learn after that they are DA through their own verbosity and what they accentuate in public, that they are ideologues, they are right-wing. We learn after, but we deploy people with capabilities. You make reference, which I'm not going to comment to that, about somebody who have plunged us into this. You do get failures and factory faults in the process. Even in politics, you do have that. A person you trusted with your life just surprise you over time. So don't put faith on individuals, put faith on principle. Because individuals can disappoint you. And that's what is important. So even in the civil service and the deployment, that is the case. Yes, there are people who have run institutions to the ground. That's correct. And it's not the case of the failure of deployment. It's the failure of those individuals. The question is, do we have checks and balances in terms of those institutions to deal with those failures? You don't have to prolong a matter when you see a person in a particular institution is failing to run an institution, and then because he's a deployed cadre or is one of our own, you keep that person. A person must go. And that is what is important. So boards are there for that reason and all of that. News 24, WhatsApp group. I mean, these things are the past. We have responded to those things. In court, we have responded to the DA. We have given them what we can give. We don't have WhatsApp group now of deployment Me and Mbalula, we are the team of deployment. We deploy in the ANC. It's chaired by Mashatile. Now, how many people who have deployed today, I don't know. So we don't have WhatsApp group. So I think you refer to the past. We have given the DA what was there in the WhatsApps, and that's it. Where we don't have, we don't have. So we have given them. Huh? We have given them WhatsApp groups, WhatsApp conversation. MK Party Manifesto, they launch every day. I'm sure when we leave here, there is a launch or a motorcade outside. So I don't know even what you mean about that. There will be a manifesto of MK this weekend. Next week, there will be a motorcade when we leave here. Leave it, my sister, it's democracy. As long as there is no violence, we are happy. And we have said to our members, you must be tolerant, you must tolerate these things. Politically, we'll correct each other about distortions that have been peddled by our former president. We will do that, but we don't want to spend time on that. It's really eating in our energy, because that project is a project of our opponents to want to weaken the ANC. Will it weaken the ANC? We don't know. Does it have influence? We don't know. We do what we can. But we didn't think in our wildest dreams we'll be in KwaZulu-Natal, everywhere in the country, talking about Zuma as opposed to us. We thought we'll be the same force, in the same direction. Now he has strengthened the hand of our opponents. He has. And he doesn't think like that. He doesn't see it. You see, when you say, I want to rescue the ANC, but I'll do it with your opponents, including your enemies, to rescue it from what I believe has gone wrong in the ANC. It doesn't work like that. Because you are collaborating with the enemy. You are collaborating with the opponents of the ANC, and you think you can rescue it. You can only rescue the ANC from within. If you believe that something wrong ideologically and otherwise has gone wrong in the ANC. If the ANC fails, Zuma will account for that. He will have contributed to its failure. I'm happy to confront Stian Hazen and all his people. But if we fail, because there are people who believe in him, and there are opportunists also who are with him, who stand to benefit positions, patronage, and all of that, their era of patronage that they benefited from is over. And they think they can get it through MK Party. And that is where they go in their numbers. Look at them and look at their names. And that's why there is a manifesto every weekend, because there's nobody in charge there. Because it is a party that was formed for a particular mission. And I will explain as time goes. The truth about MK is not what former President Zuma is saying. He knows. It's not about Cyril and all of that. It's not that. He knows. He knows the truth. Like him, ngizokhuluma ngenye ilanga. So khuluma baba, so ikhuluma lonto. Yeah. And then what did we find in Russia? Russia, we found friends there. There were 50 political parties, and the ANC and the ZANU-PF and many political parties in Africa and the world over were there. We're with Medvedev. Did I meet Putin? No. Medvedev, yes. Russian party, yes. Many other friends. China was there. Brazil was there, and all of that. So we met many friends who think alike. It's a meeting of minds and all of that. We are not government. We are the ruling party. So don't every time we go to our friends in the world, go to Naledi Ningamlalis. Who go, hey, what is... He doesn't speak for ANC all the time. He speaks for the country. So when we go this way and we go that direction, we represent the ANC and what the ANC have mandated us to talk about. And then the last point, Lunga, DA deployment release. And I don't know what you want us to do. Matsela Koko and Brian, were they deployed? I don't have that in the records. I don't have such records that they were deployed, so I don't know. I've given what I've given. So I don't know. So deployment of DA, release the DA deployments, we've got no such obligation to release anybody's deployment. We will ask them a question with time. We do have information about DA deployments, including the bodybuilders they are deploying everywhere. You read about it. It is exposed by you. So we will compile that and ask them, how did they get where they are? You will see them. They are going to deny that they ever deploy them. So they must answer the question under their administration. How is it possible a bodybuilder can hold such a position in the government of the DA in Tshwane? There's a bodybuilder there. There are many of such who were there in the government of the DA in Tshwane, even in Cape Town. Lastly, my sister, you ask about MK Party and the research. There are many polls. There are many polls. Polls are there to influence. We understand that. Let me tell you this, and I conclude by saying this. I was an ANC head of elections for some time. I was part of ANC machinery of elections. Even when we got 2/3 majority, I've never gotten a poll that says ANC is polling at 60% or 63% or 65%. It always put us 40 and below. Now, if we can stand and call a press conference and argue with these faceless people who say that Zuma will be president, he's popular than Cyril, it's a poll. Hey, there is a poll that came and it shocked everybody. It didn't last up until Sunday. They said Zuma is popular than everybody. I said, yo. And then the Chonabafundisa gange bathethe nangayo. Yatula yachoni poll. There will be another poll this weekend that says something else. But Tina, who work on the ground with our people, our machinery, we don't focus on arguing with polls. We argue with polls after, with the percentage on the board. We argue with the polls after, with the percentage on the board. Every weekend, if we will be sitting and preoccupying ourselves about the polls, I've been everywhere, Nomvula deploying me in a very short space of time, from India and everywhere. In these countries, advanced democracies, people take polls very serious. Hey, we just saw a poll. Do you think the ANC will come back? I have to explain. And these polls, hey, they are coming fast and thick and fast every week. I'm sure as we're speaking now, there is a poll that says that this rally will not reach a quorum this weekend. It's not going to happen. And let me tell you, the rally, the capacity of this stadium is 75,000. We didn't say we will, we say this stadium takes 75. We have taken care of disaster. We're expecting a lot of people here, more than 70, and all of that. But should that happen, people will be allowed in the pitch, and they will also be allowed in the overflow. We are catering for that. But the stadium, mology, and the argument about stadium to be full or not, we are not there. We are sure that the enthusiasm and coming to Durban, actually we're coming to Durban for the second time now. When we launched in 2019, we got 57%. So Moses Mabhida has been a good omen to us. And then we're coming now to launch for the second time our campaign in Moses Mabhida Stadium. And we don't know this time around whether it will be a good omen for us and so on. But it has been good to us. And the people have turned up in their numbers. It's been very peaceful, joyful, and all of that. So we're looking to a Razzmatazz Hamdinga that is coming this coming weekend.
Thank you so much.